All right, everybody, we can get kicked off with some of the logistics stuff first. We'll leave some time for everybody to trickle in for our two awesome speakers today. But welcome to our first developer user group of 2021. It's our Q1, Doug, as we call it. Really excited to be here. So just a few quick things to keep in mind as we run through the session. First is, if you have questions, don't wait until the end of a session to ask a question. Our two speakers, Jack and Larry, and myself will be monitoring the chat. So the chat and the Q&A feature as well. So please be sure to submit any questions through that as the session's going on. Could help bring up a clarifying point. And we'll definitely have some time after each of the sessions to tackle even some of the trickier ones. And if something that you talked about didn't get brought up today, email us, developerprogram@tableau.com. The line is always open, so go ahead and shoot us a note there if you have any questions about today's session or just anything related to our awesome developer platform. Another great place to come and get feedback is our DataDev Slack. If you're not there already, you absolutely should be. It's a place to connect with other data devs who work out on the field, get feedback from Tableau PMs and engineers. Really just a lot of great discussions, collaboration, sharing of ideas and feedback going on there. So really highly recommend you join up in the DataDev Slack. It's a great place. My name is Tucker Schoblad. I'm a developer advocate and product manager at Tableau. Been with Tableau about 4 years now. You can find me on Twitter if you'd like. Obviously, that photo was taken before I lopped off all of my hair this past week. It's starting to get nice here in Seattle, so I figured I'd go for a little bit of a summer cut. Glad to be your MC today, filling in for the usual suspect, Gigi, but hope you don't mind. So a few quick announcements. If you haven't heard already, we are hosting DataDev Day. Woohoo! It's our first ever kind of mini conference, one-day conference for data devs. It's Thursday, May 20th. We have a bunch of awesome speakers lined up for that. It's really for you guys. It's for anyone who's interested in the developer platform, how to get more out of our APIs, how to be inspired and see what other folks do, at small scale, at big enterprises, and kind of learn some of the tricks of the trade and really dive deep with some of our technical experts from our engineering and product team. So very, very excited for that. I know that, Gigi and Joe have just been going absolutely nuts working on this thing for the last few months. So they're so excited to share it with you. And I'm excited to be there too. I think I'm going to learn a lot. I'm in this day in, day out, and I'm still excited about, everything that's out there. So if you haven't registered, please do that. Those links are all over. You can go to tableau.com/DataDevDay. tableau.com/DataDevDay. I'll put that in the chat as soon as I'm not presenting. And we also are announcing our hackathon. So our hackathon is on April 5th, alluded to in the poll question. If you haven't answered that already, I see that a few folks are planning on attending, which is awesome. The April 5th hackathon. They've got an idea and a team. That's amazing. They're going to go in as a solo hacker. I see a few of you as well. If you're looking to find an idea, like a bunch of you are, let's take it to Slack. Head into that general channel, say, Tucker sent me here. I'm hoping to learn more about the hackathon, and if there are any ideas, maybe meet up with somebody new and find out if you guys could partner up and do some cool hacking. So I'm excited for that. I've got a project in mind. Maybe one of us could collaborate. But in any case, if you are newer to the DataDev community, come in and join Bingo. So, we've got a bunch of great challenges that kind of scale up in difficulty, but just a really great way to acclimate yourself with the broader developer platform. So there's some basic stuff, around embedding, maybe some webhooks, integrating some Slack, using some REST API functionalities, all to sort of help you step out of your comfort zone of the developer platform. Maybe you really only focus on REST API things, but you've always wondered what it's like to embed a view and create some custom buttons with the JavaScript API. So this is a great way to win some prizes, get some swag, and learn more about the developer platform and sharpen your skills. Okay, awesome. I'm gonna end the poll here. Thanks for those who answered that. I'm going to stop talking now, and I'm going to introduce our two excellent speakers today. First up is Jack Perry. He's a Tableau and Alteryx consultant at the Data School out in the UK. He's also the leader of the Tableau Prep user group, which is awesome. So, this is all about Tableau Prep and Python and APIs today. So really excited for that. And we've got a great speaker first up in Jack. And taking us home will be Larry Clark. He's been at Tableau for a while. He's a distinguished solution engineer. And that means that, he's out in the field working with customers day in, day out. He knows the platform from top to bottom, and will also be speaking with you about Tableau Prep. So big Tableau Prep focus today, and hope you guys are excited. So without further ado, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and I'll introduce Jack. So take it away.
Thank you for that intro, Tucker. Let me just share my screen and we'll get going. Cool. Is that all good? Can you see that?
How did I move? Yep, looks good to me. Thanks, Jack.
Okay, perfect. So hi everyone. I'm Jack. Unlike Tucker, I haven't been able to go for a summer cut yet, being in lockdown here in the UK. Haven't been able to get my hair cut in about 4 months, but I'm looking forward to that quite shortly. I'm going to be talking to you today about how you can connect to APIs in Tableau Prep using Python and Tabpy. We're going to build out quite a simple workflow in which you can call a currency, like an exchange rate API, and bring that data into your workflow, and then you can convert some currencies from some dummy sales data that are generated. So there's just some information here about my Twitter handle, and I've got a blog there if you're interested in any of my stuff after this session. But before we get going, just an intro to me. So as Tucker said, I'm part of the Data School in the UK in London, which is part of the Information Lab you may have heard of if you're familiar with Tableau. And I started there a little bit over 2 years ago now, at the end of 2019. So I was in the 12th Data School cohort, and there are now 22 or 23, I think. So yeah, as a result, I've been working with Tableau for a few years now. And notably, I am the leader of the Tableau Prep user group, which works quite well with this session. I run very similar ones, but it's different being on the other side and actually delivering a presentation rather than leading the session. But if off the back of today, Tableau Prep sparks your interest a little bit, you can find the user group at the URL there. And then from there, you can subscribe to updates, so you'll get updated about future sessions. And we also do a monthly newsletter about just all new things Tableau Prep, so new features, interesting blog posts, and just updates on future sessions. So yeah, definitely subscribe to that if that's something that interests you following on from this session. So what we're going to cover today, we're just going to briefly go over what Tableau Prep is in case people aren't too familiar with it, what Tabpy is, how you can set that up, and then we'll go into a hands-on demo of building out a workflow using scripting tool to bring in the data from the API that I talked about earlier. So what is Tableau Prep Builder? For those of you that may have used it before, or some people may have never touched it, so I'll just cover that off quickly. So it's Tableau's self-service data preparation tool. As analysts, I think you find a lot of your time is spent cleaning up messy data and pulling together loads of different data sources, all that messy work, which is not particularly fun at times. So Tableau released this tool a few years ago as a means of basically preparing your data to get ready for use in Tableau Desktop and to visualize that data. And it's got, as like similar to Tableau Desktop, it's got a nice visual interface, lots of drag and drop features, which makes it very intuitive and easy to use. From Tableau Prep, you can connect to a whole variety of data sources. So you can connect to your flat Excel files if you want. You can connect to databases. You could connect to some SaaS platforms like Salesforce or something like that. The variety of connections you can make in Tableau Prep is large and growing all the time. And yeah, I've just noted there, it's free with a creator license. So it's a question we often get asked at the user group, like how much does Tableau Prep cost? And if you've got a creator license, it's absolutely free to download, and well, it's included with that. So yeah, you can just download it and use your license key and get going with it. And then with the data management add-on, you can schedule your flows on the server with Tableau Prep Conductor. And as I mentioned, like it was only released a few years ago, and I think Tableau Prep as a tool has come quite a long way in that time. There's very quick release cycles. They sort of sit slightly differently to sort of the Tableau Desktop and Tableau Server releases. So they get through new updates quite frequently, and there's always a whole bunch of new features and bug fixes and all that coming your way if you're used to using it. So I mean, yeah, there's just if you've never seen the inside of Tableau Prep before, we'll see it in a bit, but that's just a screenshot of the flow that we're going to be building out later in the session. So moving on to Tabpy, which is something that's going to come up once we start building out the flow. So Tabpy is an analytics extension which allows you to leverage Python in your workbooks and your workflows. So you can utilize Python through Tabpy in both Tableau Desktop and Tableau Prep. So there's a whole number of like reasons you might want to do this. So you might want to, I don't know, utilize some sentiment scores by running Python script on your data. You could do that in Prep, or you could do that in Tableau Desktop. Other things that people have used it for in Tableau Prep is to sort of, as Prep is sort of a tool that's developing all the time, people have used it in the past to sort of leverage features that aren't necessarily in Prep yet. So an example of this would be perhaps before you could calculate ranks in Prep out the box, people would utilize the Python scripts or R scripts to be able to do that. Another thing I think people use it for as well is if you wanted to mimic sort of like a multi-row formula, so apply some kind of function across multiple rows, that's sometimes when you might use a scripting tool, because they don't have that yet. And I think it's been quite useful for the devs to see how people utilize the scripting tool in the way that it's sort of given them an insight into what new features people really want. If people are trying to find these workarounds all the time, that's what can push the product forward and sort of tailor what needs to be in it. I've put there that you need to develop your own script when working with Tableau Prep, because when using Python and Tabpy and Tableau Desktop, it's sort of all baked into the calculation, like creating a calculated field. Whereas, as you'll see in Tableau Prep, you actually just reference an external script that you've developed before you build out your flow. So I will talk you through a script that I built for the purpose of this, and we'll see how that works later on. And then, so yeah, you need to install Tabpy server on your local machine or on a remote host. If you were going to do this on your Tableau server, you might want to install Tabpy on a separate machine or on the server machine. But for the purpose of this, we're just going to be running it off my local machine. And it's really easy. The instructions for installing Tabpy are pretty straightforward. They can be found at the following GitHub link. And I think it's actually a screenshot here. Yeah, so the very basic installation process is really straightforward. You can get Tabpy up and running with literally just these 3 commands into your terminal window or like command prompt. So it's really straightforward to sort of dive in and start using this. If you were sort of deploying it at a larger scale and perhaps needed to use a configuration file when setting up Tabpy to control access and stuff like that, then obviously the process is a little bit more long-winded, I would say, but it doesn't make it overly complex. But for the everyday user and just experimenting and playing around with it, it's really straightforward. You can just install it with those 2 commands. So you just got to make sure you've got pip installed first, and then you can use the pip installer to download Tabpy, and then you can just use the Tabpy command to get that running. So with that, we can move on to a little demo of building out this workflow to call the currency API. So I will come out of PowerPoint and into Tableau Prep. So this is the sort of screen you get to when you first open Tableau Prep. So what we're going to do first, you can see here I've got a flow that I built out from earlier, but we're just going to connect some data. So then here we start to see, very similar to Tableau Desktop, it's got a very familiar feel to it. You can connect to files, or you can connect to a whole bunch of different servers and databases. So here we're just going to connect to an Excel file, and I'm going to bring in this dummy file. I'll get onto that in a second. But so I brought that in, and then I'm just going to bring in the second data source that I'm going to use for this, which is actually the sales data, which we need to convert the currencies on. So if I just bring that in as well, I've now got my 2 data sources here. So I can I get a bit of a preview about my sales data. So we can see here that I've got an ID field, the customer names, the emails, the date they purchased the item, the size, what the item was, and our currency code. So you get a little sample of what's contained within each field. This is where you might want to drop some fields out. In this case, we're fine keeping them. And then if I just click here, I can add an initial clean step and view my data. So maybe if I make this full screen. So now we get a little preview of our data. So we can see here, this is just dummy sales data. This profile pane is really useful in Tableau Prep to sort of get a visual perspective on your data. So we can see here, I've got these 4 different currencies. So I've got Australian dollars, Canadian dollars, euros, and US dollars. And we're going to be leveraging this API to get the exchange rates to convert these values into pounds. So the first thing I need to do is I need to bring in my script that is going to connect to the API. And that's where I've got this, this dummy data. So the reason I've got this dummy data is because we'll see in a second when I talk through the script, but the script running in Tableau Prep has to reference a data frame. So it has to, I can't just like bring in a scripting tool on its own and output the data from that. It has to have data flowing into it and then flowing out of it. So I basically just put this dummy data in there as just something. So it's got some data going into the tool. And then I basically just drop this data frame in the scripting tool and just then repopulate it with the data from the API. So the first thing we want to do, I would say, is you want to set up, actually, the first thing I think we'll get Tabpy running. So if I just bring up my terminal window, I've already downloaded and installed Tabpy before, so I'm not going to go through the whole process of downloading it, but I'll just show you. So if I just run that command as we saw earlier from the screenshot, we've now got Tabpy up and running. We can see it's listing on port 9004. And once I bring in my script to my Tableau Prep flow, we'll see that this server is running the script and outputting the data. So the next thing I need to do is you have to configure Tableau Prep to be able to connect to that Tabpy server. I need to tell Tableau Prep Builder where that Tabpy server is. So in this case, it's running on my local machine, but if that was running on an external server, then I would need to reference the IP address and the port so it knows where to search for that. And you can do that through here, through the help option, menu bar, and then you go to settings and performance and you look at manage analytics extension connection. Something to note is that this changed in Tableau Prep. I can't remember what version it was in. I think it was towards the back end of 2020, maybe 2020.4 or 3, but it used to be, so I'm just saying that, so depending on what version you're running, you might be running an older version, just so you don't go hunting in there. If we bring in a script tool, so here it's telling you where to go, but in older versions of Tableau Prep, you configured the connection through this pane.
It's .3.3.
Perfect. Thank you, Larry.
Yep.
So I'm just going to go up and configure it. And so we can see here that I've set this up before. But so my server is going to be localhost and the port that it's listening on is 9004. That is just the Tabpy default. And then you can also, as I mentioned earlier, if you were going for like a more complicated setup or using a configuration file when you're setting up Tabpy, you could configure different users. So you might want that, but just for this purpose, it's fine. I don't need one. So I've set that up. And now the reason I'm still getting this is because I'm trying to, at the moment, the radio button is set to rserve, and I haven't configured a connection to rserve. Rserve is basically the same, but for leveraging R scripts. But obviously I'm leveraging a Python script. So we're going to change this to Tableau Python or Tabpy server. You can see I've got my connection here. And now I need to bring in my file. So I've got this currency converter.py. You can see a little preview of it here. I will talk you through that in a second. But now we can see I've got my file, and then I have to reference a function in the script that I want to call in order to bring the data in. So I believe it's called call currency API. See if it works. So now you can see we've got some data as if by magic. I will talk you through what's going on there. But so now we can see that my my dummy data has been overwritten with this data that's coming out of an exchange rate API. And if we look at my terminal window, you can see that it's run that Python script here in the background. So what is that script doing? I can talk you through that. So this is the script that I've just put into Tableau Prep. So it's this currency converter.py. So I've just imported some packages at the beginning, and then because there is some nested JSON that comes out of this API, I've just got this function that I defined, which sort of just flattens that JSON, that nested JSON object. So that's in there to begin with, and then this is a dummy data frame that I've used that I basically overwrite with the currency data. And then this is my function that I've called in Tableau Prep here to pull that data from the API. So it's this exchange rates API if you wanted to go and explore it yourself. But I've got some parameters that I feed into that. So we've got starting from January 2019 to today. I don't have sales data that goes to today, but that's just when I developed it a while ago. And then we just make the request and we get the response back in the form of JSON. And then I use my flatten JSON function that I defined earlier to pull that into a data frame. And then there's just a little bit of renaming the columns, dropping some rows, and then just casting the type, the data type for each column, and then just returning that data frame. So that this function here is the one that I'm utilizing in the Python, in the prep flow. And then this is really important at the end, this function for get output schema. If your data types that are coming out of your Python script and your columns are different to what's going in, so in my case they are, because I put in the dummy data and I'm getting out this entirely new data set. You can see here, you need to define the schema of the data that's coming out of the script. So Tableau knows Tableau Prep knows what's coming into the flow. And you can just you can learn more going to that link, but that's what this does. So I'm just specifying that my date currency is a string and then the rate is a decimal. And then if I don't include this, the script will break, or the scripting step won't work, because Tableau won't be able to, Tableau Prep won't know what the schema of the data is. So that's really important that you do that. If your data going into the scripting tool is exactly the same as coming out in terms of column headers and the data types, then it's fine. You don't need to do that. So then that's the bulk of what we're going to cover. To just then bring this together with the sales data, we might do some cleaning on this. So I'm going to split up my my date currency field. So I've got my actual date and the currency code. So I could split these values here. We're going to just split all of them on the underscore. And now we've got those split out. We're going to use the date and the currency code to join to our sales data. So we've got a whole load of currencies here. Obviously, once I could have in the script just put in my request the ones that I want, but by doing a join in Tableau Prep, it will filter out the ones that I don't need because we're going to join on the currency code. I can just rename this date. And currency code. We can get rid of that field. We don't need it. We can get rid of this. And then finally, we're going to join this together with our sales data. So at the moment, Tableau Prep has recognized that currency code is a matching field. So it's going to try and do the join on that. But that's going to massively explode our data set. You can see we're suddenly going to get 65,000 rows. We want to bring the purchase date into that as well. Before we do that, I need to change my date field here to a date because it's not going to let me join a string to a date field. So if we just change that to a date. It's looking better. Come into here. And then that should make our join look a bit better. There we go. So this is a really neat feature of Tableau Prep. You can sort of profile the join results. We know a lot of the currency data is going to be excluded because we don't have a whole range of current. Well, we have 4 currencies in our sales data. Compared to, I'm not sure how many there were in the API, but quite a lot. The reason we're getting some excluded from our sales data is because some of the dates aren't necessarily going to match. So there's no there's no exchange rate that can come from the API on the weekend. So some of the purchases in my sales data may have been at the weekend. So at the moment they're going to be left out. So we're just going to keep those through with a right join. And then from there, you could start to calculate your sales data back into pounds. As I mentioned, some of the dates won't have joined there. So what you could, if you were doing this in practice, you may want to sort of aggregate your exchange rates to get an average rate for a week and then join that back to the data at a later stage. That's so for the rows that are missing exchange rates, you might want to join that back in, but in the interest of time, I'm not going to build out that whole workflow because that will take a little bit longer, and the main purpose of this is to talk about the scripting tool and how you can call APIs in Tableau Prep. So with that, we can see here now we've got our sales data with our exchange rates, so we can start to make those conversions. But with that, I think I will draw this to a close. Tucker, I don't know if you want to do questions now or after Larry's session as well, but
yeah,
I'm happy to take any questions if there are any.
That was awesome. Thanks for showing that off.
No problem.
We do have a few questions, and I think maybe Larry's talk, we'll get into some of them as well, but we can just cover a few here. So first up is, let's go with one of Sebastian's questions. Would it be possible to make a dynamic schema? It'd be nice to have one big Python script with several functions called by prep that we don't need to specify every time. So have you tried that before?
I haven't tried it before. As far as I'm aware, I don't think you can have a dynamic schema with that defining the output schema at the moment. Larry may know more on that than I do. So Larry, feel free to jump in if I'm wrong there. But as far as I'm aware, I think it has to be quite static, the output schema.
Yeah, there's one get output schema function per file per Python file. So yeah, that's that. I mean, you could make that as wide as you want to, and then pick out individual columns further down your prep flow. So it's your choice whether you want to place the complexity in your Python file or in your prep flow. But I agree, it would be nice to have just one function with a bunch of
so that
one
sort of
file with a
speaks
bunch of functions
to,
in it.
yeah, so that sort of speaks to the second question then. Would it be possible to have more than one input and more than one output for a Python script? Sort of the same sort of same deal there, right?
Yeah, one input only, one data frame only.
Great. Okay, and just to confirm, when we start talking about Tableau Server and Tableau Online, well, Jack and Larry, can you discuss like how refreshing prep flows works with Server and Online?
Yeah, I don't know if I could show you any now, I'm not sure, but yeah, once you've got the data management add-on, it's pretty straightforward to schedule a flow. Maybe I can show you, let's see. So
I've got it set up if you don't.
Okay, well, yeah, maybe because I'll just have to set it up, but yeah, if Larry can share, I think you just publish your flow to your Tableau server or Tableau Online instance as you would with like a Tableau workbook, and then you can just set a schedule time for that flow to run.
One qualification there is that it's fully supported in Tableau Server today. Tableau Online, it is not yet supported. Yeah, with Tableau Server, the caveat is that your .py files need to be at a UNC, a file share that's accessible from that Tableau server. With Tableau Online, we haven't gotten there yet. You can interact with Tabpy from Tableau workbooks that are published to Tableau Online in all the ways that Tableau workbooks can interact with Tabpy, but not yet Tableau Online.
Is that something that will be coming in the future, do you think?
I can neither confirm nor deny.
Okay.
All right. Well, with that, Jack, thanks again.
And I've actually had a conversation. Sorry, Jack. I've actually had a conversation about that with one of the PMs this morning, and they know that's an issue. Obviously, they're going to work on it. No idea what the roadmap is or timeframe for that is.
Okay, cool. Well, thanks for that.
Great. Well, so Larry, I'll just pass the mic over to you. We'll see if any of these trailing questions get answered in your session here. But yeah, the floor is yours. So take it away.
Okay. So hard stop in 19 minutes.
I can run over. I think we should try and get through the bulk of the content there. Sorry to put you up to the gun here, but
no, I'm good.
We can always let the Q&A bleed over. I'm happy to stick around.
All right, cool. So I think I am going to augment what you just heard with my Augmenting Tableau Prep with Python presentation. I'm going to augment what you just heard with Jack. I'll fill in a couple of details in the corners. Jack's demo was really great and comprehensive. So let's get going. I wrote an article a year and a half ago called Using Tableau Prep's New Python Interaction to Predict Titanic Survivors. That is up on the Tableau blogs. And you can read it there. It still works. As a matter of fact, I've got that prep flow running right here on my machine, and it works in 2021 just as it did in 2019. Not surprising, given that it's something that reflects something that happened well over 100 years ago. I'm going to skip this because I think Jack did a great job of introducing why you would do this. Just, you want to transform some data, you want to look up additional data from remote sources, or you want to run complex machine learning pipelines. Anything that you can do, it's simple. It's a simple matter of code. Anything that you can do with Python, you can do now in Tableau Prep, R as well. Jack talked about how to add a script to a step and demonstrated that. Configuring the script step, Jack demonstrated that as well. And I don't think I have anything to add. You can have, as he talked about, you can have multiple functions within a PY file, but since there's only one output format, I suppose I can put a sentence together eventually. So let me show you, here's one of those PY files, family size.py from that Titanic problem. So here's my family size function. And here's my get output schema function. And I did something silly here that I'll talk about in a second. But as Jack pointed out, the only time you need a get output schema function is if your output from your Python script is different from your input. So you can have essentially a library file if the output schema isn't different. So to sort of expand a little bit on the answer to that question that we gave earlier, that is one case where you could have a .py file that's just a library file with multiple functions built into it. If you are publishing this flow to a Tableau server, then this file name, when you hit browse here, you're going to need to browse to a UNC path and not obviously your local machine, because it won't be accessible from prep then on the Tableau server. And again, we're not yet supporting this in Tableau Online. Connection type, server, file name, function. There is a require SSL. So for you, those of you who are security minded by necessity, we can encrypt the interaction across the wire via SSL just by clicking a checkbox. And then you can also secure your server with the username and password if you want to. You do not need to. I found in the community forums that someone has set up a Tabpy server on the public internet for anyone's use, which sounds very generous. Incorporating the script into your flow is fairly straightforward. The silly thing that I did in this code, so a year and a half ago when I was tinkering with this stuff and getting to know it, I internalized the concept that you only need to get output schema function if your output schema is different from your input schema, right? And so when I built one of these, I thought about that and thought, well, I guess what I need to do is build a data frame that has every column, which, on further review doesn't make any sense. All you need to do, in case you run into this on a Monday morning when you haven't had enough coffee yet, is pass the columns that your Python script needs, and also pass a column or a set of columns that will allow you to join the resulting data back into your flow. You don't need to pass the entire data flow into your Python script, just the columns that it needs, and then columns that are required for the join back into the flow later on. It'll run faster, and then this output schema is much easier to write, because you don't have to incorporate all of these columns, join them back into the main data set. Setting up Tabpy, Jack went through a little bit of this. We don't include Tabpy out of the box. Pip install Tabpy works just fine. Go up to the Tabpy GitHub repository. There's a lot of documentation here, including a tutorial on TabWiki, and just read through this. It's been out for a year and a half now, and the bugs are fairly well worked out. It requires the pandas library, so pip install pandas may save you from some heartburn. From a data types perspective, one of the articles that I'll refer to has these two tables that I screenshotted from. if that's a word. The data type in Tableau Prep Builder and the corresponding data type in Python, just great for reference. And then the function in Python in that get output schema statement, those are the functions that map to the resulting data types here. So that documentation is in a blog post that I'll put up a little bit later on. And then when you're debugging, you might want to take a look at this. So I'll show you this instead of just showing you the slide. If I've got a script that I'm calling out to maybe correlate passenger class to survival, I might want to debug this script, right? And so in order to do so, that's calling, we can see it's calling pclass survival.py and the pclass survival function. So it's calling that out. Pclass survival is right here. At the head of your function, the beginning of your function, you're receiving a data frame, and that data frame is simply called df. And you can do whatever you want with that data frame. So up here, I could, even before I refer to it, I could say print df.tail. And that's going to give me the end of that data frame. And here, I've actually printed my training data frame .tail because per one of the questions 15 minutes ago, can I have multiple inputs? In this Titanic problem, I have a training data set and a testing data set. I can't have multiple inputs to a Python function. I can't have multiple data frames coming in. So I had to combine the two. And so I used, in my prep flow, I used a cleaning step to add a test flag. So my test data got a test flag and my training data got a 0 on that test flag. Combine the two, and then every one of my scripts down here uses df query test data equals 0 to pull the test data out of that data set. So that's how you take multiple data frames, multiple inputs, and run them through your flow. You've got to use a data frame query in order to do so. But back to the reason why I came in here in the first place, debugging. So if I now save this pclass survival Python file, and I show you the command line on which I'm running Tabpy, if I click off of this and then click back onto it, click off of this and then click back onto it, you'll see that it runs that script. It did a bunch of other stuff earlier, but it runs the script and it gives me the tail of my initial data frame and then the tail of my filtered data frame. So any print statement that you put in your Python file will output to the command line on which you're running Tabpy. Useful if you're running local, not useful if you're running, if you're authoring on Tableau server, because you don't have access to this command line output. I talked about get output schema already. Oh, by the way, if I go back to my prep flow here, and I now click off of this, sorry, there and there, okay. If I click off of this and click back onto it again, you'll see that prep queries all of the get output schemas. That's what all that output was here. It preps all the it queries all the get output schemas from the various script files in the flow. But since nothing changed, it actually didn't run this script again. And that's why I don't get any output. If I actually refresh my flow and then click on pclass survival again, it'll run that script and give me the output from that script. Make sense? So that's how you, that's sort of the debugging motion. And the, if I And the sort of developer edit save loop looks like this. I just edited this file, saved it. Now I can keep doing that. Here, okay. I saved that. Now I will refresh the flow and click P-class survival again. And you can see that now I'm only outputting one data frame tail instead of two because I deleted that line. So that's what the edit, save, debug loop looks like when you're working on all of this. So I talked earlier about the idea of running this on Tableau server. The Tableau server admin can go into Tableau server settings. There are two tabs. One is general and the second is extensions. Extensions has information for dashboard extensions and also analytics extensions. You click this checkbox for enable analytics extensions, and then you add an analytics extension connection. So in this case, we have, we're selecting a Tabpy analytics extension. We're showing the URL to it, whether or not you need a username and password, and then the username and password, and you're good to go there. Now, if you do publish up to Tableau server, it'll look like this. You'll have your flow there on Tableau server. If you have, as Jack said earlier, if you've got the data management add-on configured, then you'll be able to run Tableau Prep Conductor. You'll be able to schedule and run these flows up here on Tableau server. As of the most recent, as of 2020.4, we have editing. We have web editing of prep flows. So my editing expression expired. Security warning, okay, open flow. So here is Tableau Prep web edit. I actually happen to be on Tableau Online here, so you can see a warning next to each one of my Python scripts because we don't actually support running Python scripts up on Tableau server. And I provided feedback that, hey, there should be a little bit more intrusive or informative warning here saying, hey, what you're trying to do isn't feasible at this point. Don't try debugging because it's not going to work. We'll get there. I've included some resources, and I should have asked, I guess, if there's a way for me to publish these slides, but in the recording here, I put all these URLs here instead of embedding them. So the original August 2019 blog post is very informative, I think. There's a Tabpy GitHub repository that I screenshotted earlier that's got a bunch of documentation, and it's actually got Tabpy itself. Another blog post, some documentation, how to run Tabpy with Anaconda on Linux. So an install process for Tabpy on Linux. And then Nathan Mannheimer is the head PM, product manager at Tableau in charge of advanced analytics. He did a video at TC18 called Data Science Applications with Tabpy and R. So if you want to get in sort of at the ground floor of the theory behind all of this, I recommend that video because Nathan's terrific at all of this. One question that was posed earlier was, how do I configure this on Tableau server? You do so with TSM commands that are documented: connection type, external service, external port, connection timeout, configuration set, and then pending changes apply. And that's the TSM way that you actually set this up on your own Tableau server. let's see. I think that is everything that I was going to talk about. I talked about P-class. I talked about the fact that your get output schema function doesn't have to be enormous. I talked about debugging. All right, I think we're good. And I will hand it back over.
Unmute myself. Thanks a bunch, Larry. That was awesome. I think your and Jack's presentations paired really well. So it's great to have both of you here today. That was awesome. So we've got a few minutes left. We'll try not to keep anybody up to the wire. So we'll just do a bit of Q&A now here. As a reminder, this session was recorded. We're going to get the slides. So any links on those, if you want to run through it, try it out on your own. We'll get all these resources over to you in the DataDev Slack channel. So join up if you haven't already. So not sure who wants to take these questions, but we've got a few around security. So obviously we can encrypt all of the transmission across the wire with SSL in Tabpy. You can always, in Tableau server, keep the machine in your same VPC, so it's not traveling over the internet so much between the data source and Tableau. But we have some questions about client IDs and secrets and credential storing. So maybe Larry, can you speak to how an enterprise would use Tabpy in the most secure way?
We aren't completely there yet from a Kerberos and advanced security capability in Tabpy. We're username, password. We're encrypting over SSL. I have a nagging suspicion that I'm wrong in this, but I believe we're username, password only at this point. And we're not encrypted in memory in the Tabpy server itself. The Tabpy server space is not encrypted in memory. So if you were to call a function, if you were to pass a bunch of parameters, call a function, and then obviously get a return value from that function, and someone were to dump the memory of the Tabpy instance on that server, they would be able to see what those parameters were that you called with. If that's this is all on your network, or supposedly theoretically on the virtual machines that you rent from Amazon or Microsoft or Google, but we don't have those levels of security built into Tabpy at this point. I know that those are conceptual roadmap items, but I don't have a time frame for sort of the advanced, completely locked down security that might be necessary. One mitigation that we've theorized is to run the thing in containers and recycle those containers on a regular basis to blow away those memory spaces, and do a little bit of security through temporal mitigation. I don't know how to phrase that, but.
And Larry, so thanks for that. I think the question also partly verges on how would you encrypt or safely store the credentials that are used inside a script? So any API tokens or ways to kind of securely manage how to pass through those credentials to the Python script itself.
I would. That's feedback and dev prioritization that Nathan and that group needs. We don't do that today. So if those are important capabilities to you, please enter those as feature requests at tableau.com or in the community.tableau.com.
Yes, the community forum is where our PMs go to look for feedback. So I absolutely agree. Let's get an open item for one of those, or find the one that might exist today, give it an upvote. Again, the DataDev Slack channel is a great way to kind of collaborate on those. So we're at time. If you guys need to jump, totally respect it. Thank you so much for coming. If you want to stick around for a bit more Q&A, hopefully Larry and Jack have a few more minutes to spare.
I actually have a customer call scheduled now. And
Okay.
it just got bumped up against this call yesterday. So sorry
No
about that.
trouble.
If you want to, if there's a way to close this loop further, if I can research any questions, please let me know.
All right. Thanks a bunch for your time, Larry.
Thank you.
Talk soon.
Thank you all.
So Jack, we'll put the microscope on you now. Fun. Let's see. I think a lot of these from Sebastian, we're sort of kind of talking around already, just about API credentials and keeping them secure in the flow. I think this is something, again, that, as Tabpy matures, would be super helpful feedback to get to our team. So please, again, take advantage of the community. But Jack, through leading the prep user group, what have you heard from other customers and diehard prep users in this space?
So I think for a lot of prep users we have on the user group, I would say using scripts is probably at the more complex end of things that they do. So we don't necessarily have so much of this come up. I'm just trying to think, because I think something like this came up at the information lab recently. Someone literally saying about storing their credentials to an API. So I'm just trying to find what was said, because it's basically that exact question.
And while you look, I'll just anecdotally say that, I was in solutions engineering alongside Larry for a long time, and we would always get questions about even just how Tableau handles token management. And I know that there's a lot planned this calendar year as far as better ways to automatically generate tokens and deprecate them via APIs and not via interfaces. So no promises, obviously, on when those things arrive, but I think that element of our platform, especially with the move to Salesforce, they're so security first all the time, and so API first. I think some really exciting changes are coming down the pipe, not just for Tabpy, but for just kind of the broader API landscape.
Yeah, I guess as more and more people use these extra functionalities and all the sort of analytics extensions, there's only going to become more and more support for them. It's just with that growing uptake, I guess the support of it maybe lags behind a little bit sometimes, but that's understandable if they're just, because Tabpy wasn't fully supported for a while, I believe, was it a few years ago? All that kind of stuff, like as people start to use these things more and more, that support is only going to get better. On the storing credentials, so someone said that you could store them as environment variables on the server which you're hosting Tabpy on is an option, and then you can reference the environment variables in the script, or there's potentially a way to use the config file in the Tabpy library, as I mentioned earlier. If you were sort of setting up your Tabpy installation with a config file, then you might be able to reference them in there. That probably needs a bit of reading around it. I've not done it myself, but that's just what someone, Andre, who is quite heavily featured in the dev side of things, suggested. So maybe that can help some people out, but I haven't done it myself personally, so I can't really vouch for that.
Sure. Yeah, and Andre's also in the Slack channel. I just keep hammering the Slack channel. I want to see people getting active in there. Talking about this sort of feedback is super important. It's how we make better road mapping decisions, is hearing from the people who use these things day in, day out. So thanks, Sebastian, for bringing up some good points, and we hope to see you continue the conversation. But with that, we'll sign off here. Jack, thank you again so much for joining us this morning.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you for having me
across the pond. Yeah. And to everybody, looking forward to the next user group, looking forward to DataDev Day and our hackathon that's getting planned for the beginning of April. So yeah, I've been Tucker. Jack, thank you again. We'll send our praise to Larry, and hope everybody has a great rest of your morning, day, or evening. So thanks, everybody.
Cheers. Bye.